I want to talk about two things, which is creating methods inside of Ruby, creating methods inside of Ruby, and then creating functions inside of JavaScript. Then I want to talk about method arguments and defaults as well. So what's the difference between a Ruby method and a JavaScript function? No, like what is the difference between a Ruby function, a Ruby method, and a JavaScript function? What do they do? It's a trick question.
Same thing, right?
It's the same thing, yeah. It's just two ways of calling the same thing. Similarly, how a Ruby hash is the same thing as a JavaScript object. Those two function the same way. It's just they're called different things. How do I create a method inside of Ruby just to say hello to the user? Say hello, and then I'll just print out something that says hello there. So this is how we define a method inside of Ruby. It starts off with def. It has a it has a name, or like pretty much just like a variable name, and that's separated. If you have new words, like a sentence or something, every single new word is separated by an underscore. And then how do I invoke this this method at the end? How do I call this method? Like that? Yeah. So I don't. If it doesn't take in any arguments, I don't have to do anything besides just call it here. If it takes in some arguments, which we'll get to in just a second, we'll have to invoke it like that. Same thing. How do I translate that into JavaScript? I want this exact same thing over here. Function. Okay. Say hello. Okay. And then just console log hello there. And at the end, how do I call this function? Say hello, parentheses. So yeah, minor differences. I do have to invoke it with parentheses because it is a function. That's how we invoke things inside of JavaScript. Ruby, you don't need that. Like you don't need it at all. You just call the variable, and the variable will just execute whatever's inside the method. If I were to run this.
Oh, go ahead.
Cool. All right, so let's see. I want to run this Ruby file. So how do I run? What's the command to run a Ruby file? Ruby char_count.rb. Hello there. So I'm going to cd out one, go into the JavaScript folder, and then I'm going to do, how do I run something for the command line in JavaScript? Node. Hello there. To the same thing. You had a question?
I was going to ask, I noticed, we don't always need semicolons like at the end of lines in JavaScript. What's the normal convention on when to put stuff where?
Good call.
I mean, it still works, right?
It still works, yeah. So the idea is you want to put semicolons when it's like the end of a thought. So it's like in English, you do semicolons when you have two full sentences, you want to join in the middle with a semicolon rather than a period. Similarly in JavaScript, it's like if I'm doing a bunch of like if statements, like if age is greater than 21, do something else. Okay, so not until the end. Do something else. No, it's kind of like the it's kind of like the end of a thought. If the age is greater than 21, do something. Done. That's where a semicolon would go. Oh. Otherwise, do something else. Done. I generally don't put a ton of semicolons in my code, but that's because I'm also not a professional JavaScript developer. I'm sure that some people have very big opinions on that, but the way that I've been taught is when it's more or less the end of a thought, like the end of, like if I were to declare a variable up here, like let age equal 20, it's like let age equal 20. That's the end of a thought. That's where the semicolon would go.
So you suspect that professional JavaScript developers would be putting more?
Yeah, they have their own way of doing things. Let's go back to the way things were.
And open, you have those extra spaces in between lines.
Mhm.
Is that kind of good for between thoughts as well? Or do you always have it like crunched as much as possible?
What's easy to read, right? So if I went back to the way things were before,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to read, right?
Yeah.
So it's the machine doesn't care. You can put as many spaces as you want, but your developers do. If someone else is reading your code and like, holy crap, everything is so crunched together. That's generally why I put like, let age equal 20. There's a variable. Okay, next, like that's the end of a thought. I put a semicolon. I put a new line.
Like 3 ends in Ruby. You can just like crunch them all.
You can crunch them all together. Yeah.
Got it. It's 3 really. Like ends, like end. Like,
Yeah. If it's going like that, yeah. I mean, you could do that. Like I do that. I've also seen people do lines after that.
It's like grouping phrases.
Yes, grouping phrases together. Let's have a all right, so let's talk about method arguments. If we were inside of Ruby, method arguments are basically like if you need to pass anything in. For this one, we will actually just start interpolating here. We're going to have some sort of a custom greeting that you would want to have somebody. So I'll call it like phrase. If I wanted to interpolate this, I have to pass in a phrase, and then I'm just going to do p hello there, like whatever there phrase. So this is, I'm calling the say hello function. I'm passing in a phrase. It's being saved as the variable phrase, and then I'm calling it inside of the method here. Similarly, I can do the same over on the right side with this function called say hello. I can also call this phrase, and then I need to interpolate. So I'm going to have to do template literals. So 2 backticks, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll just do phrase. So I'll do hello there and hi, how are you? If all goes well, I can run this just like before, and then everything will print out the way I expect. Hello there, hi there, and then I'm going to cd up to my Ruby, and then run ruby char_count.rb. Hello there, hi, how are you? This is all more or less review for everyone, right? All right, this final one, what if somebody forgets to enter a phrase? So let's say I just call say hello right here with nothing, but it's expecting a phrase. Ruby is very, very descriptive with their error messages. And so it says, if we just read through this, it says, somewhere on line 1 in say hello, there's a wrong number of arguments given. You gave me 0, but I expected 1. At this point, I basically say, okay, on line 1, there was a phrase that I expected to get 1, but you gave me 0. Okay, on line 5, when I called it, I forgot to give something. So I'll go back and I'll do that hi there. Sometimes you want to put in what's called default arguments. If somebody forgets to put something in there, there's going to be a default. There's just going to be a default. So how I do that is I just add an equals and just do hello there. So what's going to happen is if somebody enters something, if someone calls something here as phrase, it'll overwrite whatever hello there is. If they forget to put something in there, it will by default just go with hello there. So I'm going to call it the first time. I'm not going to pass in a phrase, and that's going to show me, it's just going to say hello there. The second time when I go through, I'm going to pass in hi there, and it's actually just going to say hi there instead of hello there. So hello there and hi there. So if you forget to put something, that's called like a default argument. So I'm going to assume that something's coming in, but just in case it doesn't come in, this is the default. And finally, let's do one last thing. We're going to talk about method chaining. So this is most often going to happen in object-oriented programming. So things like languages like Ruby and Python. It's basically when you invoke a lot of methods all at once. So if I were to do like A, B, C, dot shuffle, dot pop, dot upcase, I have 3 methods being called on one line. I'm chaining all of these methods together. What's going to happen is each method at a certain point is going to return one particular output. When it's finished, then it executes the next one, and when it's finished, it executes the last one. So I have an array called ABC, and the first thing I'm going to do to it is I'm going to shuffle it. So it's as simple as it sounds. I'm just shuffling the contents inside. After that's finished, I'm going to call .pop on it. So what does .pop do? Yeah, so it takes the last one and then .upcase, if you had to guess. Okay, so gives me B, gives me C, gives me B, and this is just a random thing. So I'm chaining all these methods together. One full thing has to finish executing before I can go on to the next one. Some of these things won't work. Like if I do something blew up here. It's because ABC, when I shuffle it, it returns me an array. You can't upcase an array. So it's, if I called .upcase directly on here, that's not something that Ruby is able to do. So you have to make sure that when you start chaining these things together, which is going to happen pretty much today, you want to make sure that you understand every single time that you call a method, what is the output of that? Is it a hash? Is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an array? Cool. Let's take a 7-minute break until 10:10, and we'll be back.